I got your buffoon of the week. And I don't know how I feel about this. I almost sort of hate to do this, considering how great this guy was trying to help his team close out a playoff series. This buffoon of the week nomination is also pretty petty, just considering the place in my heart that it's coming from. Yeah. But Jimmy Butler is my buffoon of the week for you guys on today's episode. Mm-hmm. So, listen, he had two of the best games you'll ever see in a game 6-7 situation, where I think he actually had the second most combined points behind Allen Iverson of a game 6-7 conference finals. And so he was incredible, fighting through injury.
48 minutes.
The Heat had no business being in that game at the end. Yeah, he played all 48 minutes of that game.
Yep.
And it looked like the game was over. Fans started leaving the arena with like 3-4 minutes to go. They were down by double digits, and all of a sudden they start hitting some shots. Boston starts taking weird shots. Boston was taking shots early in the shot clock, thinking maybe the game was over. The Heat looked all discombobulated, and somehow the Heat wind up closing this game down. It's a 2-point game. Boston comes down, misses a shot. Now there's under 20 seconds to go. And Jimmy Butler grabs the rebound or the outlet pass, full head of steam crossing half court, fast break. Al Horford in front of him. 6'9", 6'10", Al Horford, who's a really good player, good defender, but he can't stay in front of Jimmy Butler. And Jimmy has a full head of steam. This is a quintessential Jimmy Butler situation where you got the big man on skates. All you have to do is lean your shoulder into him for the and one layup to take the lead in this game with under 10 seconds to go. Mm-hmm. And he pulls up for 3 instead, which he's not a great 3-point shooter. He's spot up, he can be okay, but fast break, he does kind of he jumps in the air and he's kind of leaning forward, so he's not even fully aligned when he's shooting it, and he clanks it off the front iron, and the Heat go on to lose the game. He could have gone in for an easy layup, maybe even an and one to win the game. And I know how amazing he was in game 6 and 7. I don't even really fully criticize him for that decision, because you know what? It was a wide open 3-point shot.
Him the buffoon of the week. It's worse than criticizing him.
But he had a chance.
He's a buffoon, but I don't know if
he wants to be a superstar. He had a chance to close that game out and to be the hero. And once again, he's going to be watching the NBA Finals, just like Timberwolves fans do every single year, from his couch.
I don't know if it's fair to call him a buffoon for this. He is a buffoon. But, I mean, my God, those last 2 games, he put that team on his back. And, yeah, I mean, that shot was questionable immediately, so I get that. But when you carry a team that much through 2 games and then play the entire game, can you be a buffoon?
Well,
like a buffoon to me is like stuff like trying to fight your coach, which, of course, he did during the season.
I get that I'm trying to shoehorn this in a little bit, and it's based on emotion. Yeah. And this is why
I don't like him, so
I'm conflicted watching Jimmy Butler, because on one hand, part of me roots for him because he's the ultimate grinder. He cares so much. He's maximized his potential, and he is able to do the things that he's done in the finals a couple of years ago in the bubble, and then game 6 and game 7. And ultimately, if we're looking back 4 years ago, he was right about a lot of things Timberwolves related, right? He was right about Karl Anthony Towns' personality, and he was right about just like his frustration was warranted. Sure. But I hate the way that he nuked the bridge and handled it.
I agree.
Because I think if he could have found a way to work with Karl Anthony Towns and even Andrew Wiggins and what he's become, with a better organization, what could have been if that was just more of a, kumbaya relationship between everybody.
Right.
And so I hate the way that he lit the bridge on fire and forced his way out, because I'd love to know what would have happened if he would have found a way to build a relationship with those guys. And in his mind, he didn't have time for it. So he did the same thing in Philadelphia. I don't have time for this. Sorry, right. I'm not going to deal with Ben Simmons. I'm out of here.
But if he hadn't been a jerk and it works here, then Tibbs is here still. Because the whole thing, the problem was a guy who was a maniac himself in Tibbs went and got Butler, who's crazy. And together they very much in their own ways nuked what should have worked. It should have worked, but it didn't, because both were maniacs. Like they were. I mean,
Do you think
Butler's-
the Wolves had a chance to give him a huge contract and they didn't?
I
So,
think it's a good idea.
Tibbs had a chance, basically.
Yeah,
And it was
so
kind
they
of
give
framed
him
as like, well, Jimmy doesn't want to play here. But Jimmy was all about the respect. And the Heat gave him that respect, right? They gave him that contract.
correct.
So if the Wolves had said, listen, I know this is tumultuous. I know that you're pissed about some things, but we freaking love you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to give you this 4-year max contract. Now, this would have been maybe the last year, the second to last year of that contract. But how would it have been different? Would he have said, okay, cool, you committed to me. I'm the max guy. I'm the man here. And so I will then commit to the team. Or do you think he would have nuked it anyways?
Alternate reality. I think he would have nuked it because I think any place that he is not considered the man, and like Cat would have always been seen as a very important component. I think Jimmy doesn't. How can I put this? He doesn't play well with others who might be considered more talented or on his par, but I think that he plays well when he can dictate things. So, like, do I think that it would have worked with Cat and Butler long term? Probably not. But here's the thing, too, that I find to be so interesting. Butler is, Phil, you're exactly right. Like, that guy has maximized everything he's got. Like, there is no questioning that. And he is a really damn talented dude, okay? So, like, putting everything about him that I don't like and despise aside, he's got attributes that a lot of guys don't have. That being said, I feel like in watching him, you've got the list of guys like him who are on a different, I mean, they're very, very good. But then you got, your Kobe's and stuff, right? And Jordans who are up like a notch or two. And they can basically do things in that game on Sunday. They don't miss. Like, they find a way to score. And like, so this is the interesting thing with Butler is I think Butler can get his team to a certain point, but because he doesn't necessarily have the ability to say, I'm not there completely, I need some help. I feel like that essentially holds him back from being a championship player. He's very, very close.
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking about this too. I think you and I are seeing this similarly in that he's kind of a tragic NBA figure in some sense, and that he has worked hard enough. He has gotten his game to a level where he's one of the 10 to 15 best players in the NBA now. I don't know that you can name 12 or 15 better players than if you want to go playoff Jimmy Butler, he's probably one of the 7 or 8 best players in the league. He was the best player in that series, and he had to sit out with knee problems, right? Mm-hmm. And the writers, there was one guy that voted Jimmy Butler Eastern Conference Finals MVP, and the other ones copped out and gave it to Jason Tatum because he played for the winning team. Mm-hmm. But he has worked and willed his way to becoming this player. But in the end, his body won't allow him to play that way on a nightly basis because his knee breaks down. Even remember that bubble game, it was game 5 against the Lakers. The Heat were down 3-1. The series was on the brink, and he goes bonkers for like a 40-point triple-double or something. And there's that, the famous photo of him leaning over the barricade behind the hoop, just completely out of gas. It's turned into a meme now. And then that was an amazing historical NBA Finals performance. He had nothing left for Game 6. He scored like 15 points in Game 6. He only took 10 shots in the next game, even though he played 40-some minutes, because he just couldn't.
Right.
His body couldn't respond. And then on the personality side, his personality to this point just won't allow him to be anything other than the alpha on a team.
Right.
But he's just not that guy. He's not a LeBron. Like he can go toe to toe in a given game, but not over the course of a series or what have you. So I don't know. I root for him in some ways, but in other ways, it's like, man, what could you have done with a talented guy like Karl Anthony Towns? If you could have found the way to get through to Karl Anthony Towns and teamed up with him instead of creating this ridiculous friction. So I'm always going to watch. The reason he's my buffoon of the week is because once again, he comes up short on a team that is running out these aging dudes like Kyle Lowry. Like, what if you had a Towns? He wouldn't have had an Edwards because they never would have drafted number 1 if Jimmy Butler was still on the team. But what could you have done with a unicorn big man like a Karl Anthony Towns? We'll never know.
And would I think part of the problem too is this. In retrospect, despite the fact that they were close at the time, the Tibbs and Butler pairing was probably among the most counterproductive things possible. Because, I mean, go back, like, Tibbs loved all that. He loved the friction. I don't know why, it's weird, but, like, he loved the turmoil, the friction, what Butler was doing. That supposed practice where Butler absolutely lost his marbles, right? Supposedly Tibbs was, like, grinning and smiling and sort of like that. And in college or something, I guess that sort of works, but this is professional basketball. I mean, professional sports, that does not go far. So the reality was this, like, what would have happened if Butler had been traded to the Wolves with a sane coach too? Like a coach that could have managed him and said, here's what I want. Here's what we need. Here's what you can do here. Like, we can win a championship. Instead of this maniacal yelling, screaming, Jimmy's my guy and we're going to kick some ass. Because that's how Tim sort of thought.
Yeah, and now I am glad because Anthony, I'd rather ride the Anthony Edwards wave here now for the next 5 years, and maybe the Wolves can get to an NBA Finals at some point, which would be the first time in franchise history. And Anthony Edwards, in some ways, is like bizarro happy Jimmy Butler. He's more physically gifted, but he just has this joyful demeanor about him that brings people together on the team, as opposed to, I mean, even with the Heat with 3 weeks to go in the regular season, we're trying to prevent Jimmy Butler from going at Spoelstra. And then, it was just, he just brings, everything is so exhausting with him. It's just, It's friction and it's injuries and everything. And through it all, you can go deep in the playoffs, but I just don't know that you can finish the job unless he is the second guy in line at some point behind somebody else. So.
And to do that, he's got to understand that role, which he does not. But yeah, he is an athlete that embraces every bit of drama, and I agree completely. In a long year, that has to be exhausting. Like, everything's a big deal there.
I do have a question for you guys about this week for the Timberwolves, because Tim Connelly is going to speak. You're going to be at the press conference. I'll jump in on Zoom, and it'll set the groundwork for the future of this organization. But a real quick shout out to Valley Park Medical Clinic. This does not have to be an embarrassing conversation, guys, okay? Valley Park is dedicated to providing breakthrough ED remedies to men in the greater Minneapolis area. Their treatments are surgery-free, drug-free, and non-invasive. It's always good to hear. The Valley Park Medical Clinic team is highly trained, also good to hear, and they'll work with you in a discreet manner and make you feel at home so you can ask any question in a professional and confidential environment. ValleyParkMedicalClinic.com. What do you guys want to hear from Tim Connelly today?
It's not what he's going to say. It's how he says it. And here's what I want. And the Wolves are trending in this direction already, but to me, it's incredibly important. I want to hear stability. I want to hear a guy who has, and I think he does, but has a plan, stability. I don't want to hear cliches. I don't want to hear pie in the sky. I want to hear a guy who's going to bring in veteran experience and add on to what I think Chris Finch brings, which is incredibly important, stability. That is what this franchise needs, what it craves. It's how it's going to eventually, hopefully, be successful long-term. So there's nothing that I want to hear, oh man, he's going to make trades, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. That's all going to be discussed. But I want to hear the most important thing that I think that sports can bring, which is the voice of stability that's going to lead the franchise for the long term, because it feels like this team has not achieved that consistently in ages.
I think I don't know how he says this, but just embracing the next chapter of Wolves basketball, and mostly with Anthony Edwards. I think Ant is the new face of this team. I know Carl's is a max player and made all NBA, and Carl, but I think Ant is obviously the face here. And the Connelly's track record in Denver was he was able to get great picks in the draft, man, without being in the lottery for the most part. I know Jamal Murray was a great pick, and the Wolves kind of helped that a little bit. But they've gotten great selections in the draft being outside the lottery, and that's hard to do in the NBA, and he did it consistently with Denver. Now, Denver hit a little bit of a glass ceiling. They obviously weren't able to get past a team like Golden State, who's now back in the finals. But hey, the Wolves would love to be a Denver Nuggets team that is routinely making the semifinals, maybe popping up with the best possible roster, get to a conference finals, get to the NBA finals. Can Tim Connelly kind of replicate that success? And yes, just bring that stability that this franchise has mostly lacked for the last 20 years.
It's funny. I don't know that there's anything Tim Connelly is going to say or do today that's going to be like newsworthy. He's probably not going to talk specifically about players because he's going to take some time to get to know everyone. I think what I'm most curious about is in the release that the Timberwolves sent out, it said 3 people are going to be up on stage for this press conference: Tim Connelly, Mark Lowry, and Alex Rodriguez. How many franchises around professional sports send up minority owners for press conferences like this for a president of operations? Have you ever seen this before?
No. And this is not a bad thing, but I think
it's great.
But I think it continues. I think it continues to address the big question, which is like, was Glenn? And I know Glenn signed off. Okay, like we can talk about that. Oh, he signed off on it. He had to sign off on it, Judd. So it must be a big deal. But my question from the day that this unique structure was announced was this: okay, that's cool. How quickly are we going to see, though, the new blood make decisions and I think we're seeing it.
Here you go.
And that is a great thing. And look, who knows? It might blow up completely eventually. But I will go back to what I said the day that this was announced. And I think we all agree. I would rather take my chances with what could go wrong to turn the page. So like if they start to say, if we don't get a new building, we're going to move or something like that, that's a chance you're taking. And I get that completely. I understand that. But the reality is anything beats where we were and technically currently are, but it feels like we're not now.
Yeah, I mean, it was there's no risk. People are, I don't know about Alex Rodriguez or this Mark Lowry guy. Glenn Taylor is one of the worst owners in professional sports. And he's not a bad human. It's not like a Donald Sterling situation with the Clippers or anything like that. He's just incompetent. And he's been for 25, 30 years. And so I love that he has, I don't know if it's self-awareness or what it is, but he's essentially saying, guys, you handle it. You go do all the work. And I'm sure those guys came in and said, hey, can we take the wheel here? We'll definitely,
right.
we'll get a list of finalists.
Very nicely, right?
We'll bring a couple of them down to Mankato. It'll be great.
If we get in the driver's seat, Glenn, you know what? Why don't you ride in back? It's really nice in back.
Well, in fact, think about Mark Lowry and A-Rod and all the different questions people have and the hatred that people have for A-Rod and his career. And, who's this Mark Lowry guy, this tech guy coming in? We're skeptical of outsiders here. The job that those guys have done building a relationship strategically, too, with Glenn Taylor to get him to buy into allowing them to own 25% of the team and then hopefully more of the team here in a couple of years, majority. And then the ability of them as communicators and relationship builders to get Glenn to just say, you know what, you go make the most important hire in the history of Timberwolves basketball. That's going to lay the groundwork for the Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns era for the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And Glenn Taylor trusts them to do that. So, I mean, he's also in his 80s
Glenn
and probably just
trusts,
does.
Yeah.
Just
How was the apple pie, boys? Let's
Yeah.
let's head to that press conference now. Glenn, we're
But
good.
those guys have put in, and I've heard this behind the scenes too. Those guys have put in a lot of work to build that relationship and to make sure that, hey, we can make decisions, but everything is also running through Glenn. Still, it's a masterful job of managing up.
Yes, and on Glenn too. I think it's fair to say this: beyond just like Glenn being Glenn. Glenn probably is one of the last ma and pa shops to own a sports team in pro sports. So like it goes beyond just like Glenn, because Glenn was, certainly frustrating to watch operate. But the reality is this: Glenn Taylor was, I don't know, a bit like Calvin and the Twins. Like he literally would come up from Mankato to watch the games. Like I know he owns corporations and stuff, but there was like literally no, to me, corporate structure behind how he ran this team. And in 2022, that's quaint, but I don't think it's smart. And so like beyond just, well, I'm glad Glenn's gone. I think when you look at the whole thing of how Glenn ran this franchise, It probably left pro sports circa 1998 or something like that. Like, teams are now run by moguls, by cutthroat moguls.
I want my owner to be able to show up on Shark Tank and not make a fool of himself or
Right.
just look completely out of place. You know, can you imagine Glenn just sitting there next to the other four sharks?
You know what? Business-wise, for a long time, that dude did a lot of good things. And congratulations, that's great. But I just think when you look at Glenn and his wife walk in and they go sit in their courtside seats, and that's awesome. But it's not how pro sports works now.
No.
I mean, Mark Laurie at the end of wins is taking off his shoes and taunting opponents because
Does
he's
Glenn
a mogul.
take his shoes off too? His little loafers,
Put on his slippers, maybe.
like Mr. Rogers.
But that's just the thing here is like, it's just high time that teams in this town are run by people who have some cutthroat.
I think Glenn should take his sweater off. It was a little, I don't know if he wears like a little
Mr.
undershirt
Rogers,
or something there.
That would have been a great marketing campaign.
Wave the sweater,
Do
wave
a
that little
Mr.
early
Rogers
90s
thing
sweater.
and start
those
to
little-
play the theme. It's a beautiful day in the Timberwolves neighborhood. Yeah, that would have been a great idea.
So yeah, I'll see what Tim Connelly has to say. I know you'll be out there, and we'll definitely react to it on tomorrow's show. All of this Wolves discussion too, presented by a partner of theirs, also a partner of ours, Federated Insurance. Been around for over 100 years, helping business owners in and around the Twin Cities area and well beyond too. And Federated has they have a website called federatedinsurance.com. It's very great. And they have 4 key tenets that they operate by within their own internal culture: equity, integrity, teamwork, and respect. And these 4 tenets or cornerstones create the foundation by which they do everything, the way that they communicate with you, all of their decision-making, et cetera. You can find out more about why Federated is a great partner for businesses at federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. All right, dudes, write that down. Predictions tomorrow, an accountability session
Wednesday already. Whew.
over on Purple Daily on this Tuesday. We're going to talk about and speculate on the best case scenario for the Minnesota Vikings in 2022. What does that look like, and why does Judd only have it at 7 wins? We'll see. I'll see you guys.